probably first 4 years, I had a big chip on my shoulder. I kind of wanted to shove it down people's throat that I was really intelligent in this one specific, unique niche field. That will only get you so far, though.
Welcome to Life Lessons of a Creative Entrepreneur, where we talk about how to become the best version of you so your creative business can thrive. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. My guest for this episode is my super talented friend, Alex. I wish I had a sexy intro to go into this episode with, but I do not, so words will just have to do. He is a copywriter and behind-the-scenes marketing consultant who's worked with 7- and 8-figure fitness, coaching, and personal development brands. He's responsible for driving over $500,000 in sales for clients using email marketing alone. Outside of marketing and copywriting, Alex trains jiu-jitsu, hunts for the world's best sweet potato fries, and was stung by an entire nest of bees as a toddler. Not sure why he decided to include that last bit in this intro, but here we are. In this episode, we're talking about the struggles and pivots that Alex has faced that has led him here, mentorship, changing the struggling artist narrative, leaving Team No Sleep behind, money mindset, and many more. I hope you enjoyed this episode and feel free to let me know what are some topics that y'all would like to see on this podcast in the comments below. All right, that's it. Peace. Let's just dive right into it. I would like for you to kind of give us a quick kind of look into your journey thus far and the challenges that have led you to this very moment.
Yeah. So my very first journey kind of in entrepreneurship started with getting into nutrition coaching. But even if I take a few steps backwards, like I was a really bad student when I was younger. And a big part of that comes from the fact that starting off, I had learning disabilities. So I had to go to special classes for reading, for writing. I had to go, and every single day I'd have to leave and go see an eye doctor. So what we figured out in first grade, that my first grade teacher, Ms. Jordan, found out was that my eyes were at two different strengths. So whenever I'd read, I could track across, and then my other eye would pull my tracking down. So my teacher recognized really quickly that I would start goofing off during any time that we read because I couldn't read. And so that kind of set the tone, I think, for a lot of my entrepreneurial journey, and a big theme for me throughout it all. And so from a very young age, I had the idea that I wasn't very intelligent, and I had the idea that if I was going to get regular grades, I just have to work harder than other people. And so going through high school and everything like that, I was like a strong C+ student, never did very well, got into college and wanted to actually own my own preschool. So nobody these days can really ever think of me as a preschool teacher because I just don't have that personality. But I saw an industry that could use a completely different way of doing things and having a kind of like fresh perspective and fresh blood in it, because it's a bunch of people who are burned out. They're the teachers who have tenure and they just have been phoning it in for the past 20 years. And I came in as this kind of young guy who was working in a predominantly female field as a young guy. And I was like, we can switch things up and change it. So when I went to college, I actually had a purpose, and that purpose actually allowed me to get much better grades. And so after graduating from college, I went into becoming a preschool teacher of all things for 5 years consecutively. So I worked at two very different schools, and one of them was a very rigid, very kind of like Christian charter school. And it just didn't resonate well with me. Like, they didn't teach how the kids needed to learn. They weren't free thinking enough. And I think that as somebody who's a creative, like, I always am trying to think outside the box and how to do things differently. And it just didn't resonate well. The next school that I left and went and worked at was more free thinking than I could have ever imagined. It was, they let the kids determine kind of how we were going to get where we were going. So the way that I could frame it there is, they really had an end destination that we wanted all the kids to kind of get to, but how the kids got there was kind of up to them, and how we communicated with them and bridged the gap between their current knowledge base and what they needed to learn, and supporting that without doing it for them was a really interesting mindset perspective for me. So after that job, I left and I went to go into nutrition coaching. And part of the reason for that was because I had two ladies who I worked with who fundamentally changed my life with one conversation, where I was actually going to apply to come back and become a full-time teacher. And they're like, Alex, you'll get this job. You're great. The parents love you. We love you. The kids love you. But let's be honest, your heart actually isn't in this. Your heart is in nutrition coaching. Anybody who talks to you about nutrition for 30 seconds can see it oozing out of you. You have to take your shot at doing this, because if you don't, you're going to look back when you're 50 and you're going to regret it. And so I was like, oh, that's pretty powerful to hear from people. And so I decided to take my shot. I struggled for a long time, like just kind of throwing shit against the wall and seeing what stuck, and not a lot stuck in the first like 3 to 4 years of doing it, because trying everything, I tried to just literally create an immense amount of content all the time. And that was something that actually came back to work in my favor, but it was the delayed gratification of doing a blog every week, doing multiple newsletters, creating content for social media all the time and being super, super consistent. And so one of the things that I kind of learned in college that allowed me to shift how I look at everything in my life is that I was still probably below average IQ, but I knew that if I just worked harder than everybody else around me, that I would be able to surpass them at some certain level. They would get fatigued when I had energy still. And if I just taught myself and put myself in the mind frame of, if I just outwork you, I'll be able to beat you, that was very gratifying to me. So when I was doing nutrition coaching for those probably first 4 years, I had a big chip on my shoulder. I kind of wanted to shove it down people's throat that I was really intelligent in this one specific, unique niche field. That will only get you so far though. And so in nutrition coaching, one of the things that I was always on the hunt for was trying to find new ways to grow my business. So I got into like masterminds and things like that. And that's where I learned a little bit about email marketing. And so what I started to do was I was like, oh, well, I've accrued, 1,200 emails over the past 4 years. And I've been on some pretty big name podcasts and been able to guest blog for some decently well-known people in the industry. And I was always trying to drive people back to my website to give them something for free, to get them on my email list. And up until this point, all I'd ever done was just giving them free value. I'd help them, by getting on free 20-minute calls with my email list when it was really small. I would, give away as much free value as I possibly could, solve problems, pull them and ask what they wanted to learn about. And then when I learned about email marketing, I started to figure out that I could send one email to my list and suddenly I could get 8 or 9 new coaching applications and convert, 7 or 8 of those people into new clients. And so inside of doing that, what started to happen is my friends who were other fit pros started to see the success I was having and say, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing this via email? We don't really know about this. And so I started to help them. And along the way, I started to recognize that email marketing was really powerful. And so I started to get more courses and more books and everything along those lines. Along the way, I had somebody that I did a guest blog for, and they go, hey, I know you're kind of getting into copywriting. I have somebody who's looking for a green thumb copywriter that they can kind of train underneath them if you want to learn from somebody. And initially it started as me being like, if I can learn from this guy, I can blow up my nutrition coaching business. What actually ended up happening is I got to a place where I was like, I don't really want to hire any staff underneath me. And I also had an ethical issue with charging really astronomically high prices for nutrition coaching, if we're being honest, because it's like you do a few things differently than everybody else, but it's like nutrition coaching is kind of nutrition coaching. So what ended up happening is I got free mentorship from this guy for a year. So he took me underneath his wing, and every single week we would get on a 1-hour call where he said, okay, I'll train you, but what you need to do is you need to get up an hour or 2 early every single day and write as many emails as you can. And then I'll review the best 3 of those emails with you on a 1-hour call once a week so I can train you. And he tore my shit apart for the very first probably 4 to 6 months. Like, I didn't get anything that resembled a compliment for the very first 4 months. And his compliment to me was, that's a pretty good email. Like every other time that him and I communicated before that, it was, your big idea isn't good. Your hook is off. The overall angle that you're taking is incorrect. Like, these symptoms aren't going to resonate with people. It feels salesy or hypey, or your call to action feels a little bit too forced. And so I got a crazy crash course in copywriting for the very first year that I was kind of doing it. So after that, what happened is I launched and completely burned down my nutrition coaching business. I just stopped doing it and went full time into copywriting. And what I soon realized is that what I was trained in by this guy for free for a year, and then he eventually ended up becoming somebody that I paid to coach me, is that I learned more about copywriting in that 1 year than some people learn in their entire career. Because I came in as somebody who had to be completely humbled, somebody who was starting from scratch, and had somebody who taught me a very unique way of writing that was based around conversational copywriting, where it's not hypey, it's not forced. It feels like you and I are having a conversation like we are right now, only it's probably a little bit more of a back and forth than it is currently. And I started to look at other people's copy that they had done that they wanted me to review, and I could point out a lot of the issues with it. So I got this crazy start in copywriting because I had somebody who was one of the best kept secrets in the industry training me for free for a year and reviewing everything that I wrote. And then eventually we transitioned into him just coaching me and me working to build my own copywriting business that's now kind of transitioned into marketing and brand strategy with kind of like a specialty in copywriting.
Wow, that's amazing. Ooh, that's an awesome mentor.
Mentorship is one of the best things that I think not enough people get. Trying to do it on your own for too long, I think, is one of the biggest mistakes that people make, is they want to bang their head against the wall and think that if they bang their head against a different wall, maybe it's going to work better. And so I've always tried to seek out people that were further along than me and could kind of give me the blueprint. And so instead of viewing it as a cost, I always viewed it as, what's the investment? How can I turn this around and turn it into something that is going to save me time, money, energy, and just essentially bandwidth and not burn me out. And so I feel really, really lucky to have been in the position to have him mentor me for free for a year, because some people probably don't get that kind of training in their entire career. And I was lucky enough to get it for free for an entire year. And the way that he writes is very, very specific. And part of the reason that he was as harsh with me in the very beginning is because I was going to be writing underneath his umbrella. So that meant I was going to be adopting his prices. I was going to be writing underneath his name. And he was like letting me borrow his clout. So from the very beginning, he was just abundantly clear about the fact that he was like, yo, you're going to be writing underneath my name. You're going to be charging my prices. You're going to be working with people who would otherwise be my clients. Like, your shit needs to be airtight and needs to be buttoned up really well. So I'm going to train you how I would train myself if I needed it. And so I got really lucky, but I was also kind of in the right place at the right time and had a good enough mindset to look at it and not take offense to anything that he was saying to me, because I could have quit 3 months in and been like, this isn't for me. Maybe I just suck at copywriting. Like, I'm no good. And it wasn't the case. I just hadn't studied it enough. And there was somebody who was an absolute genius and a wizard at this craft that I wanted to learn, who was willing to teach me. I just had to check my ego and be humble and show up every week and do what he asked me to do, which was to just write the best emails that I could.
I tell everyone, mentorship is just one of the most powerful things that you can do. You have to, you should have so many different types of mentors, not just for your business, but for your personal life, for your fitness life, like all these different lives, because you really need that constant check of perspective, because it's very easy to lose clarity or lose direction. And so these mentors really keep you on track. And right now, like, I'm spending thousands of dollars in mentorship, and it sometimes feels like, whoa, like I'm investing a lot of money into this side of my life, but it's just like, it's the only way that I'm going to level up. Even if you're super talented as a creative or an entrepreneur or whatever, and you have everything to be a superstar, at the end of the day, you're gonna hit a wall, because your own knowledge alone is not gonna take you all the way. So you absolutely need mentorship. What do you think is some of the reasons why creators or creatives hesitate in getting a mentor?
I think that probably one of the biggest reasons is because there is a narrative of the struggling artist, and that you have to do it alone. Or I think a big thing is that a lot of the times they probably struggle to find a mentor that they feel like allows them to be authentically themselves, because as a creative, it's like, you don't want anybody fucking with your secret sauce, right? So it's like, if you have a hard time finding somebody who you feel like aligns with that authenticity and with how you show up, that makes it difficult to invest in that person, because if you look at them and you don't see the elements that you see in yourself of like authenticity, integrity, all these kinds of things, it can be hard. And if we're honest, there are a lot of sham mentors out there. Like, I'm sure that a lot of people who have been screwed over by people who just didn't deliver on what they promised, or they ended up, once you pay them a certain amount of money, they completely flip the script and they're very, very different once you pay them. And I think that there's a lot of people that have the narrative of being the starving artist, and they think they have to go it alone, and they wear it as like a badge of honor to have to eat ramen for a long ass time, or they struggle to find a mentor who aligns with them from a place of authenticity and integrity, and will help them get to where they want, while maintaining that integrity and not telling them to do something that feels very out of alignment with like who they are to their core.
Yeah, that makes sense. Why do you think, even with all, like, because the internet really kind of democratized being able to go to market, being able to really test ideas at the lowest cost possible, and really understand if you had the winning sauce or not. So it really broke a lot of barriers as far as really being able to grow big businesses as a very small team. So what do you think, like, keeps the struggling artist mentality still alive?
That's an awesome question. I would say the biggest thing that keeps the struggling artist mentality alive is that it's mindset. It is strictly due to a mindset thing. It is, if you don't have a lot of money and you are the struggling artist, it's hard for you to justify spending that money, right? Like, it's, if you view it as a cost, not an investment, or not a sure thing, I think that it's going to be way more difficult to be able to invest that money, because you're going to view it as a cost. It's going to seem like a risk instead of something that you can put your full effort into and see a massive ROI on. But I'd be also very curious to know like your perspective on it as well, in terms of like what it is that you think would keep somebody who has the ability, obviously has the chops and the knowledge and has the creativity to blow up. Like what would make them want to stay small, you think?
To me, it has to be their environment. It has to be the people that they're around and what they've grown up to believe, especially if you're around people that are not artists, that see it as a hobby, or that see it as, oh, you're just going to go play outside and you expect to make a shit ton of money doing that. Like, nah, that's not real. Or even a business. I know a lot of artists that don't see their art as a business. They just see it as something as they do, even if they're getting paid for it. So they don't use email marketing. They don't use marketing in general. They don't think about how their pieces are going to fit into a bigger picture within their business. They don't see their business as levels or goals or anything like that. So definitely, I think that those people that want to stay small or see themselves like that is definitely feeding into either their family or whoever their environment is.
The family thing I think is massive, because I think that you have a dream and you have a vision and you know where you want to go, and other people, because they don't have that same dream or vision, or maybe because they played it safe and gave up on their dream or vision and didn't get to where they wanted. Not that they're trying to do it, but there's the crabs in the bucket mentality where it's like, I see you changing, I see you evolving, I see you growing. Like, why are you doing that? And it's almost like, if you've ever heard this phrase before, it's like if you put a bunch of crabs in a bucket and one starts to try to climb out, the other crabs literally grab the crab and pull it back down into the bucket. It's like, who the fuck are you to climb out of this bucket? We're all in here together. And so it's the idea, I think, from a lot of family members and people, that they do it from a place of wanting to keep you safe, but safe isn't where your business is going to grow. Safe is not where you're going to be discovered and found, or anything along those lines. And I think that they also do it from a perspective of, if they never went after their dreams, it's hard for them to advocate you going for your dreams as well. And I think that you hit on a really, really pertinent point there, with your environment being a massive part of it all. Like that's the reason that I moved from Portland to Denver. And it's part of the reason I spend so much time in Austin, is it's like those environments are infectious and they have people in them that are very go-getter-esque. Like there's a very strong entrepreneurial vibe here in Austin, or where I live and spend most of my time in Denver. And it's the reason that I left Portland, Oregon, where I was originally born and raised, is because the environment was no longer serving me. It was keeping me smaller than I wanted to be. And I knew that if I wanted to grow, I had to leave Portland and I had to go to some place that would force me to grow, and that I could have more challenging conversations, or that people there wouldn't allow me to play small. And I think that, kind of going back to what you're saying about the environment, is our environment can be our family, but it can also be our friends and our peer groups. Like, are they challenge you? Are they calling you on your shit? Are they telling you that you're playing small? Like, to take it back to the conversation that we had earlier this week at Cosmic when we were having a drink. Well, I was having a drink. She was having a kombucha. So when you called me out and you're like, why are you fucking with a low vibration client? You're like, they don't respect or honor your expertise, your value, your gifts and what you bring to this world. And like, you have to have those kind of people in your life, and you have to have those kinds of conversations happening on a regular basis to be able to get to that next level.
When you're in this space, it's like, if you have to explain your value to someone, then that's probably not the client.
Yeah,
for you, right? 100%. Because people that are buying our services, they know exactly what they're buying. They know exactly why they're coming to us. And it's very simple. They don't have the time.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have the time. And
or the
they
expertise.
Well, of course. But like at this point, like for example, like my clients understand the value of video. They may not be able to know how to shoot video or whatever, but they know the 1000% they run their businesses based on video content. And so the why they would want to pay for my premium services are because they want to be zero involved in the entire process. Mm-hmm. They just want their videos to be done and be sent out, and that's it. And know that that's being taken care of, that peace of mind. Like really, they're paying for that peace of mind, knowing that it's going to get done and the collateral damage is very low. Not that it doesn't happen, right? Because that's part of any business is going to have collateral damage, but it's going to be very low when you're, paying that premium price.
And I think that also at a premium price, you attract people who they're less headaches.
Yeah.
Like when you attract people who recognize the value, they're willing to pay, those people that I work with are always the people who are the easiest to work with. And they're always, and a lot of the times, like I've worked with a number of very high level companies that were already doing very big numbers. And I get behind the scenes and I'm like, you just need a welcome series and an abandoned cart sequence. And if we write that, I promise you'll start netting 20% more sales. And then it's like these little tweaks that have these massive impacts. And suddenly you're a savior and all you did was write 10 emails. And it blows my mind how easy it is sometimes sometimes for higher level clients, because a lot of the people that I've worked with have gotten to this extremely high level because they grinded it out. They were consistent as fuck. Like they posted content, they helped people for free. They, put out emails that were just strictly giving value, or they showed up consistently on Instagram doing stories, doing lives and all these kinds of things. And so they achieved this high level because they focused on adding value and helping people as much as they possibly could. And so then you get somebody like me or you on the back end where you're like, oh, you can optimize these things. And we write a couple thousand words, and suddenly people that are getting on your email list are now turning into clients 3 times quicker, and they're actually buying more when they place an order from you. And I think that it's this crazy thing where I look at a lot of them, I'm like, oh, you just hustled your way here. That's impressive. That is always something like, damn, like I have an immense amount of admiration for it, but now it's time to get away from hustling and it's time to start optimizing.
Wow. That really, that was amazing. I love that because it's true. And we were talking about this earlier too, where like now, like I feel like I've literally grinded my ass to this point in my career. And I can continue to do that. I can continue to have that same mindset of like, I just got to be going and working 14-hour days and no days off and hustle.
Team no sleep.
But like team no sleep, which trust me, I've used that hashtag before and been very proud of it. But like now it's like, no, it is about how can I get more output by putting in less. Like how can I work 10 hours a week and I'm looking like I'm working 100 hours a week based on what I'm putting out there. So it really comes down to optimization, automation, and outsourcing, like really that's where it's at. Like it really blows my mind how, and this is something I want to talk to you about that translates into money, but to me, I'm not afraid to spend all my money on my business. I'm not afraid to take everything that I'm bringing in and put it right back into my business, whether it be through outsourcing or knowledge or skill stacking or whatever. Because that's the other thing. Like when you're when you're building a business, there's so many different components. You're going to have a lot of scammers. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to rip you off, that are going to just looking for a buck. So having some kind of understanding of what the process of that particular department is, it's going to be very important. That takes time. So that circles back to why mentorship will cut that time in a lot of ways. But it comes down to like a lot of people I know that are very sensitive about spending money. And we see it, right, with some clients that are just not for us, that they don't want to spend the money on the premium product. They just want to get some cheap services that are not going to yield the results. And then they're like, oh no, it doesn't work. But what do you think about the mindset of money? Because to me, it's energy. To me, it's not a thing. And to me, that's not even wealth. Money to me is not wealth.
It's an energy and it's a mindset. So I have one story that I always tell people that is really funny, but at the time it wasn't funny. So when I was still like a struggling nutrition coach and building everything up, I had 5 sales calls booked. And I was like, this is going to be a massive week. I'm going to bring in 5 new clients. But here's the thing. I was coming to it from an energy of desperation and needing them. And so I also had a pretty decent close rate as a nutrition coach. Like I had my script. I had everything that I would hit on. I knew how to do it. Not in like a sleazy, weird way, but I had a pretty good flow when it would come to sales. I blew every single sales call that week. I blew 3 of them literally in one day. And the whole reason that I know that it happened is because I came from a place of wanting and needing and desperation, and not from a place of abundance and I'm the prize here. And so I think that it is an energy and it's a mindset. And it's funny how when you approach things with this is what I do, I'm really fucking good at it, I can help you achieve this. And here's the thing, at the end of the day, I don't need you as a client. You need me more than I need you. And when you show up with that kind of energy and that level of confidence, it transcends the money or the relationship with the person, and it turns into essentially you being an expert, and it turns into you stepping into who you are. And when you show up with that kind of energy to yourself and to how you show up and how you present yourself, it attracts the right people to you. And I think that for me personally, I grew up in a family where we were decently poor growing up. And so like I was taught that money was a non-renewable resource. It was something you have to be very tight with, because if you spend too much of it, it's not coming back. You can't go out and just earn more. And so when I very first got into entrepreneurship, one of the big things for me that I had to work a ton on was having a completely different mindset with money, because my mindset was broken. Like I viewed it the same way that I was taught by my parents. They did the best that they could. And I didn't even know that we were poor growing up because I had such a fun fucking childhood. But like later I was like, oh yeah, we're pretty broke, huh? Like most people don't have to use cloth diapers and things like that as a baby. But Shifting that mindset for me from a place of scarcity to a place of abundance has allowed me to grow my business significantly, and it allows me to show up with people and need nothing and want nothing from them. So one of the common things that I do for a lot of people is I'll hop on a Zoom call and I'll break stuff down for them. And I've had people be like, aren't you afraid that they're going to take your ideas and implement them or yada, yada? And I'm like, yeah, let them try. Like, they're not going to do it. If they haven't done it until now, they're not going to do it. I could give you literally verbatim the flows that you would need to write or tell you exactly what angles you need to take. You're not going to write it. You're not going to write it as good as me. And I'm not saying that to try to sound arrogant, but I'm just confident in my ability to write copy that converts well.
And because you've done it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
The application and the action that you need to take in order to really accomplish the result is where the juice is. And a lot of people don't want to go through that.
Yeah.
They don't want to waste their time on it. It's like building something without the instruction manual versus reading the instruction manual first. How many people do you know toss the instructions away? And it's like, no, I'm going to build this intuitively. Like, and you're going to spend 3 times. You know what I mean? It's just, it makes no sense. But understand, like, number one, like, do you have any money issues? The scarcity mindset, does that come from your family? Which most likely in a lot of cases it does. And like, really deal with that, because that's going to allow you to grow your business exponentially or constantly hit a wall or stay at a specific, it's like I was telling you, when you're also dealing with premium services, like when you're going to go ask for someone for $50,000, like you can't go in there all insecure and be like, oh, well, am I worth this? Like, no, like you got to first, before you even, go at bat, you got to really believe that you're worth that. And that has to do with your own self-worth.
Yeah. And one of the things that my mentors told me, George Bryant, so he's somebody that I've worked with in the past year and do copywriting for now. He's like, dude, I go into these consulting gigs where I ask for a lot of money. And he's like, I go in and I own the outcome. He's like, a lot of the times I walk in there, I'm not 100% sure how we're going to achieve what I told him we're going to achieve. He's like, but I'm confident in my ability to fucking figure out before that 3 to 5 days is up. It's like, I go in there and he's like, every single time they're happy with it. He's like, maybe we didn't get everything accomplished that I wanted to get accomplished, but he's like, I'm walking out, they're happy, and we've implemented what we needed to implement. And he goes, I walk in there and I own the outcome. We figure it out once I'm in the room. He's like, but I've already owned the outcome, which means we're going to figure it out once I step in that room over the next 3 to 5 days. And I'm confident in my ability to deliver that after I've promised them the outcome.
I love that.
Yeah. He's a boss.
Yeah, he sounds like a boss. And obviously he made it a boss. So that's like other boss levels. I love that. So then the other thing that I really want to talk about is creativity is in everything. And every single person is creative. And I know a lot of very successful people that don't even think that they're creative people. And that to me is mind blowing, because for you to be a human being and not think that you're creative is like, whoa. So personal development is that's the industry that I consider myself in. At the end of the day, to me, I work in the personal development industry. I work in the industry of how can I better myself on a daily basis to become the best version of myself. And therefore, everything else around it is going to thrive because I'm focusing on this one thing, which is me first. What do you think the link between character building and really focusing on that personal growth and being the best human that you can be translates into the success of your business or creative endeavors?
Like you were kind of talking about a little bit earlier, it's like if you're out of alignment with yourself and if you have issues internally, it's going to manifest in your business. For me, one of the biggest journeys, and you and I have spoken a ton about this the very first time that we met, was like me getting and joining a men's group. Because for me, growing up as a guy, I didn't have a dad around all the time. I'd get to see him once per week, and I was raised by a single mom. And so there's a lot of things about like masculinity and how to operate in relationships that I didn't really understand. And so due to the previous breakup that I had, back in October, that opened my eyes to a lot of things, because she called me out on a lot of things that were dead honest true. And so I call her my oracle, and it makes people laugh, but I'm dead serious when I say it, because she wasn't just calling me out on ways that I was showing up in our relationship. She was calling me out on areas that I was out of integrity, ways that I wasn't having enough fun in my life, ways that I was at certain times burning myself out and prioritizing the right things. And I wasn't at a place where I could honestly absorb that and have the awareness to recognize what a gift it was to hear that from somebody who truly loved and cared about me and wasn't nagging me, but was calling me forward to be a better man and a better human. And so that spurred me to get a little bit beyond what I would consider personal development, and maybe it falls under that category, but start to dive really deep into like men's work and how I show up, how I have an ability to hold space and to respond instead of react, how I'm able to, create safety for people and be more vulnerable and authentically myself and be able to honestly express my emotions and let people know, instead of somebody asking me being like, hey, how are you? And just defaulting to fine, because I've said that 100 different times and I was fucking far from fine, and be like, hey, you know what? I'm actually feeling a ton of shame today, or I'm feeling a ton of like, I'm feeling super judged about this, or I have a lot of fear about this. And to see people's shoulders drop and to see them get more comfortable with me immediately, because I'm just kind of willing to go first and willing to, open up the kimono and be like, hey, this is who I am. And if you do or don't like me, either way is totally fine. But like, I'm standing in my truth and I'm going to show up in authenticity and integrity, even when it's not the easy thing to do, has exploded my relationship. It has made my business grow. It has given me more flow. I feel more creative. I feel less stressed. I'm able to have a lot more fun in my everyday life. And so, personal development and men's work has been a massive part in helping me to grow my business. I would say that more importantly for me, it's helped me to grow my fucking life. Like I stopped trying to hustle all the time because I needed validation from somebody else. And I started to be like, yo, why am I actually doing what I'm doing? No, I'm actually going to take the weekend off and I'm going to go on a camping trip, or I'm going to fly out to Austin on a whim and spend 7 days out here with super dope people. And it's allowed me to, when I step into work, be more focused, be more productive, and start being a lot more creative. I think as a creative, sometimes we can get a little bit bogged down when you're constantly hustling and grinding. You lose that creativity, right? If like you're just fucking burned out and living on caffeine and sleeping 3 hours a night, like you'll be able to accomplish stuff to a certain level, but you're going to get so burned out that you're going to lose that creativity. You're going to lose that edge. Those ideas that were popping up in the shower aren't going to be there anymore. And so by focusing on my authenticity, my integrity, being able to express my emotions, and trying to just tell the fucking truth instead of lying to people about stuff. And even if it's little white lies like, oh, I'm fine, or like, oh, just dumb things that don't honestly matter, and just be completely honest, even when it makes my voice shake and it's super inconvenient and uncomfortable, has allowed me to bring that into like my business. So I can speak to clients very transparently about that kind of stuff. I don't like bring my emotional baggage. It's not a therapy session when we hop on like a kickoff call for copywriting, but at the same time, I'm able to more honestly communicate with them and tell them about the things that I think aren't going to work, or the things that I would take it a different direction, or be like, that's not going to work for me. Sorry, the price is the price, or anything along those lines. And so, personal development has played a massive role, specifically men's work, in my business. More importantly than in my business, it's allowed me to show up entirely different in my life and build better, stronger relationships in the past year than I've made in the previous probably 34 years of my life, to have more fun and laugh my ass off, to have more time away from work so that I can recharge the battery and come back and be focused, and to just live a life that like I'm way more happier with. Like I show up way happier every day now because I have done the men's work, and because I've dove very deep and told people I'm not, things I'm not proud about. I've written letters to people and all those kinds of things that are difficult and hard work, but it freed me from living within the confines of being like, I have to show up this way. I have to be a chameleon and act one way with a certain group of people and act another way with another. It's like, this is just kind of fucking me. And it's like bleach blonde hair, showing up honest, like I'll tell you all the craziest shit I've done. And if we can't be friends after that, that's totally fine, but I'm not going to change anymore, because that forces me to live at a way lower vibration than I know that I'm destined to be at.
It's amazing. I love that. This podcast is also about the life lessons that we've acquired along the journey of creative entrepreneurship and building our businesses. So what is one of the to wrap it up, what is like the biggest life lesson that you've acquired so far on your journey?
Categorically, every area of your life gets better when you tell the truth. You don't have to remember anything. You don't have to hide anything. You can be transparent with your audience. You can be transparent with the people you work with. I think that telling the truth removes your need to show up any way other than how you are. And it allows you to pull the right people into your world who want to work with you and want to hire you. And it also allows you to repel the people who aren't going to be a good fit and are going to be a pain in your ass anyway. So if you show up authentically in your truth every day and you tell the truth, even when it's inconvenient and it's hard, you'll also be surprised, because you think that you're going to be judged. You think people are going to push you away or not like you. And 9 times out of 10, when you show up authentically and you're like, yeah, I totally fucked this up, I'm feeling like super shamed about it, or I'm feeling super judged, or I'm afraid that this is going to happen, people resonate with that and they like you more, because we live in a modern day and age of, waist slimmers and face apps that like change up your face and shit. And so when you show up as your messy, honest, authentic self because you're telling the truth, people fucking love that and they crave it, because they're able to then see that you're in the work, that you're in a part of your journey, and people can relate to somebody who's in their journey. They can't relate to people who are too perfect. They look at that person, they go, yeah, but your life's perfect. I can't really relate to that. And they look at somebody else who maybe is telling the truth all the time and they're being honest and they're like, yo, I totally fucked this up. Or like, yo, I tried to make this recipe and it tasted like shit. Or like, I tried to create a podcast studio. If I tried to do that, it would end up a fucking train wreck. So like, if you're just telling the truth and being honest, people can envision themselves along for the ride on where you're going. And it also allows them to root for you, because everybody likes somebody who is in the journey and isn't a finished product. They like to see somebody who's still on it. It's why everybody loves, the small band that everybody loves them. And then when they blow up, like, oh, fuck them, they got big time. It's like, those people were along for the journey. And when they thought that they were too perfect, they started to like, oh, fuck them, they got big time. They don't have time for the little guys anymore, because they were there for the journey. And that's what everybody loves.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much for being here, Alex.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.